Welcome back to Top of Mind. My name is Hayley Westoby, and today we have another recording from a talk that I did in October last year. This was also at South by Southwest, so if you've tuned into episode 23, I think it is, we talked about the discussion around what networking looks like in a creator era and the ultimate pickup line when it comes to creating connections in 2024. 2025. This conversation was a panel conversation that I hosted with Sophie Hood and Lauren Meisner, both who I have interviewed before for Top of Mind on episodes 13, 15 and 16 if you want to rewatch them. But this panel discussion was all around debating whether in-person or online networking is better. And it also forces us to face this controversial truth, which is the following that you're building might not be as important as you think it is. As this event was ticketed, I really wanted to give you guys an opportunity to hear the value and the insights that Lauren and Sophie shared. It was such a great chat, and I really wish more people could have attended, but they couldn't. So this is why I'm sharing with you today. As always, if you love this conversation and this discussion, please like, comment, subscribe, and don't forget to share it with your friends. Enjoy. My name is Hayley. I'm the founder of Gambit Collective, which is a pay-as-you-go marketing agency specialising in personal branding. And I'm joined today by Sophie and Lauren. Sophie Hood, Lauren Meisner. Sophie is the founder of Soul Tonic, and Lauren is the founder of Centennial World and host of podcast Infinite Scroll. And today we're going to be talking about networking. Now, we've come fresh from a talk all around the debate between in-person versus digital networking and whether one is more superior or not. But to start us off, girls, do you want to give me 3 words to introduce yourselves? So if I'll start with you.
I would go with optimistic, fiercely loyal. I know that's
That's two. That doesn't count.
Yeah, good.
Okay.
And risk tolerant.
Okay, I like that. Lauren?
I would say resourceful, adaptable, and determined.
Oh, that gives you a good insight to these 2 women that I have with me today. Now, when we talk about the discussion of online versus in-person networking, I personally believe that one cannot exist without the other. And we spoke about this in the last session that we had, in the sense that if you're not who you are online, in person, you'll be found out really quickly. So do you prefer online or in real life networking, Lauren?
I think there's a place for both. For me, I am much better in the written word, so I am more comfortable usually starting those relationships online and then taking them offline. I think one of the biggest things that all of us combat right now in the digital age is there's just information overload. We're constantly bombarded by information. So I do think that's why it's so important to take those relationships offline eventually, because it's more memorable. You can make a deeper connection. But I think there is a place for both. It can open up more doors for people that might not be so comfortable to meet in real life.
I love that. Soph, what do you think?
I agree. I think they coexist. I will say, though, that online is a great place to find people to then take offline. And we spoke about this before, but you have to show up the same on and offline to build trust and for people to want to advocate for you. So some of the best business deals I've ever done are when I've been reached out to online and then we've had an in-person catch-up and they've said, wow, you're the exact same as you were online. And for me, that's a huge compliment, because when you're online, you don't know if you're talking to a bot, if you don't know you're talking to the person's team that's created that post. So there's definitely a place for both, but I would say the business growth I've seen has been from advocacy in offline conversations.
And if you were given the choice to start with one, like if we've got someone in the audience here who was like, done neither, I don't have an online brand or I've not networked online, I don't really put myself in situations to network, do you favour one over the other to start?
I would say, we spoke about this earlier, but really like cold emails or cold reaching out via LinkedIn or wherever, like it goes a long way. I think you can absolutely start with it online, but you need to be very clear about what you want from that person. I will always give anyone time. I just need to know what they want my time for, And same thing, I will reach out to whoever in the industry. I'm in media, so I'll reach out to, media founders, industry leaders, mentors. But if I need to be very specific about what I'm looking for. So I think that's probably a good place to start if you are a little bit nervous. But I know that you would probably say, just go up to them in real life and just ask them a question.
Absolutely. So what do you think?
I agree with what you said, but I also think it depends on what you're trying to achieve. So if you're running a business and you have a product and you want it to be in as many retail stores as possible, then you might have a very specific target of someone you're trying to reach, and that person might appreciate an in-person reach out more than an online. And it really depends who the person is, their age, their industry, and then you can be more targeted. But I would say building a personal brand in the background, just a few posts on LinkedIn, just to give you some credibility to then be able to reach out to that person to take it offline is a really good place to start.
Yeah, I agree. I think the amount of people I get asking me, can you look at my resume? And I'm like, have you updated your LinkedIn? If you're going for a marketing role, the first place people are going to look is your LinkedIn, right? And I think that I would argue now that your social profiles are more important than the resume that you're submitting, because it will tell me a lot more about what you're passionate about, what you're interested in, and all of those things. So one piece of advice then to ensure that your connections that you're making are meaningful, because I think that in the digital age, it's so easy to just click follow or, connect, and it's kind of like and run. But how can we ensure that the connections that we're making are meaningful and making an impact in terms of why you're networking? Soph?
I think connecting with people with intent and then following up with a message as to why you have connected goes a really long way. Just a simple message of, I've been following you, I'm loving your journey of you doing X, I'm also trying to do X, can we connect? Makes the person on the other end understand you get put on their radar very, very quickly, so that in the future, if you do come across each other, maybe you see each other in real life, maybe you come across them on a different social networking platform, it's not awkward, it's quite seamless, and it gives you a base to be able to build a connection.
Yeah, I would just reframe that as transparency. Be really transparent with the person on why you want to connect with them, what you think you'll get out of it, and you would hope that somebody who's reaching out to you would do the same. I know we were talking earlier about kind of not spreading yourself too thin, setting boundaries, and that's probably a good boundary you could set if you get people that are reaching out to you all the time. Just asking for that transparency, what do you want from this?
Yeah, I mean, one thing that I find really helpful is, we talk about it all the time in the sense that weekly I'll get asked, can we meet up for coffee? And I'm like, sometimes coffee is the most inefficient thing for you to get the most amount of information out of me. If you need this information quickly, email me being like, hey, I'm looking for information about X, Y, and Z, or I'm looking for a connection with this person, or I need an introduction to this person. Instead of wasting your time with a coffee, just be really forward and then meet that person after you've helped them to kind of further grow that connection. Now, one thing I hear all the time is that LinkedIn is full of wankers, and what I have to say to that is that you create your own feed. You follow those people. So instead of it being a LinkedIn problem, it's probably a you problem, right? You have the power to curate your feed. But there are a lot of icks in the networking and connection world, right? Girls, do you have any icks that you want to share with us?
I think my biggest ick is I get asked very often for almost free consulting. And, we have a Gen Z media brand, and we do consulting. That's something that we get paid for brands as well. And I think that can be difficult. It's different if it's, a friend or a brand owner that I know well or something, and we can kind of chat amongst ourselves. But, having cold outreach or clients that we're working with ask for, it's like scope creep, right? It's like asking for a little bit more, asking to pick my brain on Gen Z trends and all of that stuff. And it's that's actually, we get paid for that. So I think that's probably one of my biggest icks is people don't realize the value in that.
Hey, just quickly, if you are enjoying this episode, don't forget to like, subscribe, leave a comment, or share it with your friends. Now back to the episode.
Yeah, I mean, I constantly say we're not a charity, right? Like, I will happily speak until the cows come home, and I'm a recovering people pleaser when it comes to helping people, right? But I think that at the end of the day, there's that respect for the work that you guys do, and there's, I think there's a code word that people use when they're wanting free advice, and it's like, hey, can I pick your brain? And it's like, how long are you going to be picking my brain for? Do I need to charge you? Like those kinds of things. Soph, do you have an ick?
I do, and I look at networking kind of like dating, and when you're interested in someone and you keep up the comms, and then they just ghost you out of nowhere. That's what can happen a lot in networking, where they reach out to you, they want to meet up, they schedule a time, you've put it in your calendar weeks in advance, and then they either cancel or they ghost you. And that's really challenging because I'm trying to diary Jenga. I've got stuff all over the place. And if you cancel, we were saying this before, we have a 1 cancellation rule. After that, I just have no trust. And there's no point in networking with no trust because you can't get anything from it. And that person you'll never be an advocate for that person. So that's probably my biggest ick.
I think one of the biggest things we were talking about before with that 1 cancellation rule is there's a lot of the times people will say, yeah, I'm free then, or let's catch up. I think one of the biggest things I hate is when you catch up in real life and then people are like, we should catch up. And you're like, okay, let me know when. Yeah. And then they just don't. And it just feels very disingenuous because you're just sitting there being like, I'm putting myself out there. I'm ready to catch up with you. You let me know when, but I'm also not going to do all of the legwork myself. Now, so if you touched on it before, but I know that you have a number of success stories when it comes to networking online and the success that has come for you and your business, Soul Tonic, from there. Do you want to share one of those success stories with us?
So I have both personal and brand success stories, but for me, what's most impactful is the business growth I've seen through my personal TikTok, which is a correlation that I never thought I would be speaking about, to be honest. So I've been reached out to in international markets by retailers who want to stock my product, Soul Tonic, because they've been following my personal TikTok. And they're interested in the category, interested in the product, but they're interested in me as a founder. And that's then moved offline into, I guess, more Zoom-style meetings, online but offline, one-on-one. And now I'm ranged in those retailers internationally off the back of building my personal brand on TikTok and being true to myself and being really vulnerable with my business story.
I love that. Lauren, do you have a success story that you can share with us?
Yeah, I actually have 2. So when we were probably about a year into the business and just trying to figure out how to scale, how to grow, how to get to that next level. So I started reaching out to all of these different founders, media brand founders. So the co-founders of Pedestrian, Mia Friedman, whoever would meet with us. And to be honest, almost every single person met with us. So that's a little success story just right there. We were literally a year in, no one knew who we were. We were so random. And one of the most valuable pieces of advice came from one of the meetings with the co-founder of Pedestrian, Chris. He said to us, you don't need to get funding. You don't need to look at all these different financing options. You just need to do more sales. And it sounds so straightforward and kind of silly now to say, but I have just literally taken that with me through the whole business journey, 5 years in almost. I have kept that in the back of my mind, you just need to do more sales. And that literally transformed the way that I looked at the business and our problem solving. And then the second one is at the beginning of this year, I met with this man who's very influential in media. He's a big media mentor for a lot of kind of when media brands are merging or in crisis. And so I met with him because I recently became a solo founder and I was in crisis and I was like, please meet with me. So he met with me. And one of the most valuable things I took from that was he said, if you are struggling to grow on certain platforms or you're not seeing the return on your investment, now it's been 4 years, just get rid of those platforms. So he was really the one that convinced us, we had already been thinking about this, but convinced us to actually stop posting on Meta completely because it was just not valuable for our brand and for our audience. They weren't connecting with us on Meta and it felt a little bit crazy, as you know. We're a publisher, like to not have an Instagram account, but it was so valuable because we were able to take our time away from like banging our heads against the wall, being like, how will we make this work? And we can eventually go back to that platform if we need to in the future, if we have more time, more resources. But and so that's actually changed the direction as well of our year and how we look at our content now.
Yeah, I love that. Now, when it comes to creating content that converts, one rule that we live by is that you don't have to be everywhere. You don't have to be on every channel. And as you said, if Meta's not working for you, then Meta's not working for you. When it comes to creating content that works, is there something that's worked for either of you two when it comes to either your personal brand or your business brand, Lauren?
Yeah, I mean, it's again, this is now 4 years into TikTok or 5 years into TikTok. It feels like kind of a no-brainer. But when we got on TikTok in 2019, it was obviously before it really exploded. And we were trying to figure out how to show up online as a publisher, like how to show up on that platform as a publisher. And I remember just like speaking to my husband one night, and he was like, well, why don't you just put news on TikTok? Like, why don't you just make your stories that you're writing every day, that you're publishing, like, just put those on TikTok? And I was like, how would we even do that? Like, the green screen option didn't even exist at that point. Like, the feature literally did not even exist. And so we would make these little, like, videos, and they'd have text on screen with, like, and it's exactly what we see now, but, like, the pictures and the videos of the people we were talking about or the stories. And that got us, like, no joke, almost every single one of our early deals, like our partnerships for the first probably like year and a half to 2 years, was because we had really invested in our TikTok strategy, and no one else at the time, again, this was 2019, especially in Australia, was putting news on TikTok.
Soph?
Well, as a ex-finance corporate, I can't say that I'm across all of the trends, but what's worked for me from a personal brand point of view is consistently showing up as myself, and that's how I've been able to connect to my audience, and that's why people feel that they can reach out to me, because on TikTok I'm not very scary, I'm very relaxed, I just say what's on my mind, I tell people things that I probably shouldn't, and 10 years ago I would have been so embarrassed to, and that's what secured me both personal deals and business deals. And we've spoken about this before, but if you can find a way to keep showing up that's true to yourself, but you can be consistent in showing up, which I'm able to do now because it's just myself, I don't find it a chore to post every day on TikTok, because I'm not trying to be someone I'm not trying to relate to people in a way that they want to be related to. I'm just being myself, and that seems to resonate to my audience.
Yeah, I love that. I think we spoke about it. I mean, I talk about it all the time. Consistency wins, right? When it comes to figuring out the algorithm or showing up, consistency will always be the thing that kind of keeps you top of mind. So putting yourself out there can be really scary. We're both extroverts, so not as scary for us. But what advice do you have for someone that's scared of attending a networking event or creating content online, just starting?
Hey, just quickly, if you are loving this episode, don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment, or share it with your friends. Now back to the episode.
I get asked this a lot, and my answer is always the same, which is, if you don't do it, someone else will, and your competitor will, or the person that you're pining for that job will do it. And it's not scary anymore because everyone's doing it. And when you start thinking of it like that, and that it's human nature, it's second nature then, and that you might be losing out, I think that usually gives people the confidence and the push to just do it. Because back in the day, it might have been awkward or embarrassing to post your face in a video, but now everyone is doing it, and you're now losing out by not taking that opportunity or going down that avenue. So that's my advice.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I talk about this exact example. I learned to drive manual. Who learned to drive a manual car? Oh, love that. When you started learning to drive a manual car, you bunny hopped down the road like it was going out of fashion. But now you get in a manual car and you don't even think about changing the gears. So I think being able to start something, no one starts out as doing something well. So being able to kind of start, suck, and keep going forwards is the thing that's going to make you better at that. Now, Lauren, you spend your life studying internet culture, Gen Z. What predictions do you have for the future of networking and what that looks like?
Okay, so I see it going offline, absolutely. Gen Z has spent almost all of their early working career online. It's all been work from home, Zoom meetings. They really crave that offline experience. And I actually see brands getting involved in the offline experience for Gen Z. I'm sure a lot of us have seen the conversations, especially on TikTok, about third spaces or the lack thereof third spaces for young people. And I think there's a big opportunity for brands to help facilitate those third spaces, those experiences for Gen Z. And it can be from a networking perspective, it can be a professional perspective, especially if you're a brand that, kind of like a MailChimp or someone who is in those professional services. But it can also just be, an experience for young people to just relax and build community. When you consider Gen Z's favorite platforms and favorite apps, they're like Discord, Geneva, Snapchat, they're messaging apps, right? They're community-based apps. So helping them take that community and those relationships offline, I think, is a huge missed opportunity for brands in putting their marketing dollars there. And that's actually where I see the future of marketing, is those community-based activations as opposed to like influencer and media activations.
Amazing. Now, before I ask my last question, does anyone have any questions that they would like to ask anyone here? No. Don't worry, we don't bite. Yes. Oh, there's a microphone.
Hello. Thanks very much for that. Is there anything you've learned that you wish you knew, like early on, sort of?
Oh my gosh, that was my last question. Go for it. Take it away.
Great question.
I would say it's not that deep. Like, it's not that serious. What you're doing and how you're showing up and what business you're building, you're not saving the world, you're not curing brain cancer. Like, kind of get over yourself. And that's something that I needed to hear earlier on, is that people are consuming so much content. They don't care about if your lip syncing video was a little bit off, or if you embarrassed yourself in that mirror selfie, or you spoke to the camera and you weren't that articulate. I think I was very much in my head, especially when I was early on in a very corporate finance career. I was embarrassed that I would show up and it would be a disservice to the brand that I was working for. But it's not that deep. People don't care as much as you care. So, and that's now my attitude now. And it's made me show up more consistently online, for sure.
Totally. I think with that as well, the amount of people when I first started sharing content, they're like, "You're always online." I'm like, "Yeah, I am." And now it's like they see the business that I've built, the connections that I make, the opportunities that I get. And it's like, well, if you started posting online when I did, like, it's kind of, just wait, I think is important. Lauren, do you have any advice?
I think just not being married to any one strategy. I was like, the brand vision, you get so passionate about it. And for me, the initial brand vision was being a publication, like a .com, because I was a writer. And I felt like at the time that was what was missing, was like true coverage on like the creator economy and internet culture in the written form. Now, obviously, this was, again, like 5+ years ago, so things have changed and most publishers cover that type of content now anyways. But over the years, we just, like, listening to the market, so many brands just saying, like, yeah, we do want to work with you, but we don't really care about the website. Like, the website was always just last priority. It's not really where they wanted to advertise, even though it had our biggest numbers for many years. And so having to, like, let go of the website, and, like, we still have a publication. We still publish on it. We still get decent traffic, but it's absolutely no longer our priority. We have a daily podcast now instead, and we've prioritized our newsletter and our TikTok and just other platforms. So it was hard, but like just letting go of that faster, I think would have made a world of difference.
Yeah, I mean, mine is always done is better than perfect. And anyone that knows me here knows that I would say it on a weekly occasion. Getting something out there and being consistent in turning up is better than it being perfect. If you spell something wrong on a TikTok and you're like, well, I'll either delete it and then I have to do it again, just leave it. Own it. Make another video about the fact that you made a spelling mistake. Like, I think leaning into the fact that you're a human being is really important. And I think far too often we can spend time, I suppose, trying to be somebody that we're not. Yet the people that people connect with most are the people that are most authentic and, most natural when it comes to talking and says what's on their mind as opposed to what's on someone else's mind. So I think that's my piece of advice. Anyone else with questions? Em? Shout. You got a big voice.
Hey team. From a company perspective, we know that when we look at culture, it's always better if culture is empowered more so than forced.
Absolutely.
If we look at this from a personal branding perspective, how are companies leaning into this and for it to be empowered, not forced? And I think we can all say that we flick through LinkedIn and go, oh, it's a bit uncomfortable. Some CEO or some manager's gone, can you post this to your socials? Just tell me what your experience has been with this.
I think for me, we work with hundreds of brands where we create pilot programs with them, we write their content for them, and we do workshops with their teams. Where I've seen the most success, and look, firstly, I'll start by saying that brands that invest in personal branding always come out on top. As a business, you pay 10% more salary for a business that isn't known versus a business that is. So first of all, you're actually losing money if you're not letting your team post about what they're doing. Secondly, there's an increase, I think it's like 561, don't quote me, 561% increase in people's messages about the brand versus brand message and the reach that comes with that. So even if I'm sharing something on behalf of a brand, as a person, people are far more receptive to that than if it was coming from a logo account or a business account. In terms of working with an organisation, we see it split. I think we have some people that go, well, we need our team posting on LinkedIn. What can we do to force them, as you said? And I think it has to be a decision by that person. But what I would say is having that empowerment to say, hey, you don't have to post about the business all the time. You don't have to post about the work that you're doing all the time. Find 3 things that you're passionate about and that you want to be known for. Maybe they overlap with work. Maybe they don't. But empower them to make those decisions for themselves. I do that with my team. We sit down at the beginning when they start with me. We go through their kind of content strategy, what they want to talk about, what they're interested in. Why am I going to get them to talk about the things that I'm interested in if they're not interested in it? Because they're not going to be consistent. And I would rather them be consistent online than talking about the stuff that I'm passionate about. So for me, it's about being able to have those conversations with your team, empower the people that do want to do it, and the people that don't want to do it, don't. But if it's really important to you as a business or an organisation, I build it into my team's job descriptions. Like, they've got 1 post a week. Can be on anything. It can be for our business's platform. It can be for your own personal brand. Whatever you want to do, but you've got to create 1 piece of content every week that's got to go out. You can choose what channel it goes out on, TikTok, Instagram, LinkedIn, just 1. And it gets them thinking like that. So if I think from a corporate point of view, you've got a point of view.
It's a good question because it is quite uncomfortable when you're scrolling a corporate LinkedIn and then there's a post that feels quite forced. And that's right, it is. It's bad. When I was at EY, we didn't even have a policy around what you could and couldn't post. I wouldn't be able to post anything not work-related. Same when I was at LVMH, it was the same. And then Red Bull, as the final stop, they started being more transparent and open about posting about your personal brand. And that is where, as a corporation, you see the most uplift is when you're very transparent about the corporate policy, about what you can and can't post, and encourage people to post about stuff outside of work. When it's work-related and it feels forced, it probably is forced, and that's not working, and that's not going to help the corporation's retention rate and satisfaction at work. So to Hayley's point, it's all about empowering the individuals within the larger firms, smaller firms, wherever. But I think the larger firms is where we have a job to be done, just because there's so much hierarchy and there's not much transparency.
I mean, I think about it now, like a lot of the businesses that I've worked for in the lead up to starting my own business, they were like, don't share this on social or don't talk about your job on social media. And I think that there's an element of fear there from an employer standpoint, because they're like, well, what are they going to say? Like, she doesn't have a filter. What is she going to say? And it's like, well, you shouldn't be scared if you've got a great work culture. you shouldn't be scared if you're having transparent conversations with your team. So I think that fear only really comes from people that are scared of the unknown, and I think that the fear of the unknown can only be eliminated by transparent conversations. Any other questions? No? No? Amazing. I'm going to end on one question. What is something that is overrated and underrated when it comes to networking? Give me overrated first.
Oh, well, I think I'm just going to double down because we've said it before, but overrated is just reaching out and saying, can I pick your brain, or not even saying anything at all, and it being very confusing as to why that person's connecting. I think being clear and being intentional is the way to go.
Overrated?
Overrated?
Yeah.
I think overrated is when you get a connection request and the person has used one of those like LinkedIn pre-populated. I get all the time, hey Lauren, how are you? I'm like, I've literally never met you before. Yeah. Why are you messaging me? Yeah. So I feel like that to me it's like an ick. It's like it's overrated because it's like an ick.
Yeah, I agree. I think one thing for me is follow count when it comes to networking. I think so many people look at the numbers and go, I need to have more followers. And I'm like, I'd rather 100 followers that are all engaged with my content and potentially going to buy from me than 10,000 followers where a tiny little percentage convert or have conversations or actually are impacted by what I say. What is something that is underrated?
Underrated for me is not reaching out to someone because you think that they're too big or too famous or they're too successful. Those are often the people that get reached out to the least, ironically. And you would be surprised, I think Lauren mentioned it before, the hit rate when you do reach out and you're quite proactive and you're quite clear with what you want from them about the openness, meeting up with you. And I think people are so scared and kind of hamstrung by their own fear. And yeah, it's underrated. I think you should just go for it.
I would say underrated. It's more like industry specific to me, but we get invited to a lot of brand events and PR launches and things like that, and just showing face as much as you can. Obviously, there's like bandwidth, all of that, but as much as you can, because you will remain top of mind if there's a new campaign, if there's a new opportunity, and you're constantly showing up for that brand, that publicist, that team, showing that support. They'll eventually show it back.
Amazing. My underrated thing is LinkedIn as a whole, because I think that not enough people are using LinkedIn. I don't think people are using it to its full capacity, and I just don't think that people truly realise the potential that LinkedIn has as a networking tool. That's everything. We are supposed to network after this, and you would have had a little card, or there's little cards floating around. So if you do want to form those in-person connections and you're not sure how to start the conversation, we've given you some pickup lines that you can start those conversations with. We're hanging around for the next couple of 20, 10, 15 minutes, however we're here for. If you guys do want to connect with us on LinkedIn, our LinkedIn QR codes are there, so feel free to scan them. Thank you so much, Lauren and Sophie, for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. If you loved the discussion, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, or share it with a friend. We have new episodes dropping every fortnight.